We left off with this guy.
We did. This is Kanushayu, chief of the Cree Lesser Slave Lake.
What did he say again?
Are you willing to give means to instruct our children, as long as the sun shines and the water runs, so that our children will long grow up, ever increasing in knowledge?
He looks really concerned.
Well, he had reason to be. As long as the sun shines, chapter 2. The meaning of culture and traditions. Knowledge is survival for Aboriginal people. Within their traditions, children grew up immersed in their own culture. They learned to coexist with nature, feed themselves, make clothing, and create shelter. They shared in ceremonies that marked the seasons and memorable events. The Royal Proclamation by King George III of England in 1763 recognized the rights of several nations of tribes of Indians with whom we are connected over a vast territory. The promise was ignored when the Canadian government created the Indian Act in 1876, almost a decade after Canada became a country. The Indian Act gave the Department of Indian Affairs complete control over Aboriginal life. Indian agents across Canada carried out the dictates of the department with unlimited power. At this time, Inuit and Métis people were excluded. In late June of 1899, Cree chief Kinushayu addressed the Treaty No. 8 Commission in Grouard, Alberta. The scope of the treaty, one of 11 numbered treaties signed, was huge, covering an area of approximately 840,000 square kilometers, rich in natural resources. Treaty 8 promised the protection of Queen Victoria with benefits such as land, financial support, hunting rights and supplies, health care, and even an annual allotment of seeds for farming. Kinushayu asked for the school education for the children of Treaty 8 to ensure their security in a world dominated by non-Aboriginal people. Families did not foresee that the European form of education would wipe out their own essential knowledge. They did not expect that their cultures, traditions, children, languages, skills, abilities, teachings, and spiritual beliefs would be attacked, suppressed, and demeaned. Yet, this is what happened. 10,000 years of culture. For Europeans valued the many distinct Aboriginal cultures expressed through ceremonies, stories, legends, inventions, medicines, and arts and crafts. To the newcomers, Aboriginal people were savages with heathen, non-Christian beliefs.
You say that a lot, like heathen and Satan.
Well, a lot of people from a lot of different cultures were called heathen or Satan or satanic. That was just the day that we kind of grew up in. But it was more of a joke in my era. Kind of. When the oppressive laws of the Indian Act did not stop traditional Aboriginal activity, powerful forces stepped in. Missionaries forced pipe carriers to destroy their sacred pipes. Totem poles were removed from the West Coast villages and sold around the world. Wampum belts were taken in Ontario. Author Larry Loy's grandfather, Edward Twin Cree, traveled into the remote northern Alberta forest to drum and dance with others. He used a tin plate as a hand drum because real drums were forbidden.
How can they outlaw a drum?
They do it all the time. They do it all the time. Storytelling is teaching. Our Aboriginal elders are the most respected members of the Mi'kmaq community because of the wisdom and knowledge collected from their life experiences. One of the principal ways of teaching your young children is through the telling of legends that embody thousands of years of experience in living off the land. The storytellers emphasize living harmoniously with the two-legged and four-legged, the winged ones, and those that swim in the waters. All our relations, even the plants, are said to have spirit and are really our relations. When we have our sacred ceremonies, like the Sweat Lodge, we end it by saying Misit Nom Kamak, which means all my relations. Isabel Knockwood is a Mi'kmaq elder. She is author of Out of Depths, The Experiences of Mi'kmaq Children at the Indian Residential School at Shubenacadie, Nova Scotia. The history of the Catholic school she attended from 1942 to 1953. She was awarded an honorary doctorate degree in civil law by St. Mary's University of Nova Scotia in 2013 for her life's work among First Nations people.
You could practice that and not make mistakes.
I could. But you know what? Sometimes when you're reading for people,
But you can't upload this nightly.
no, I can't. But, sometimes it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes it's the intention that matters. Let's leave this on her for a while. What is culture? What are traditions? Culture, the making of things. The word originally referred to as growing plants and crops. Culture is the sum of all things created by a group of people who share a common language or national identity. Language, ceremonies, belief, arts, spiritual beliefs, art, music, laws, food, holidays, and clothing are all aspects of culture. Aboriginal cultures are diverse. There is not one Aboriginal culture, there are many. Traditions, anything observed or practiced by individuals or groups that people have handed down to others, often through generations. The word tradition comes from two Latin words, trans, meaning across or over, and do, the verb dare, to give. A tradition can be a teaching, a meal, a song, an observance of a special day or time of year, a ceremony. People of any age can create traditions. Confiscated wampum belts. In October of 1924, the local Indian agent arrived at the Six Nations Reserve in Wesheweken, Ontario, territory of the Haudenosaunee Iroquois, with an armed escort of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He confiscated the wampum belts used as official records and agreements at the Six Nations of Grand River Confederacy Councils. More than 50 years later, on May 8, 1988, 11 wampum belts were finally returned to Six Nations Confederacy chiefs. Kaswentha, a 2-row wampum belt below, is replicated of the original wampum and are records of the Haudenosaunee history depicting major events and or agreements. They can be read based on the symbols created by beads made by quahog shells. This belt relates the treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch. White beads represent water. The upper purple line represents Haudenosaunee canoe. The lower purple line is symbolic of a Dutch ship. 3 rows of white beads between the 2 purple lines stand for peace, harmony, and friendship. The vessels sail side by side in the same body of water, but their paths will never cross or collide.
And then they confiscated it. What's this?
This is band Potlatch.
Are these masks?
Yeah, I think so.
These are fucking badass.
Let's try not to swear.
I know, you can't help it. These are amazing.
They sure are. Let's just take time to look at this artwork. That's pretty freaking badass, isn't it?
It sure is. You had to leave all this behind and just go sit in this dull-ass school? It's like a Pink Floyd nightmare in the wall.
And that's why Bob Geldof wanted to kill himself and his marriage was all after that. He was having that midlife crisis that was so bad.
Damn it. So is that like what happened with John, what's his name, Constantine? Is that why he's all messed up?
Possibly. The band Potlatch. The potlatch is an ancient ceremony practiced by coastal First Nations, yet at one point, more than a century ago, its first was in question. The word Yakwa, potlatch in English, means to give. At the weeks-long ceremony, guests feasted, gave speeches, sang age-old songs, and performed the powerful masked dances with pride and joy. Marriages and births were announced. Children were named. A chief's rights and privileges transferred, totem poles raised, and the dead mourned. Finally, the host gave away his wealth to the guests who had witnessed the event. The more gifts given, the higher the status achieved by the potlatch host.
Well, that's different.
It sure is. The Indian agents, the potlatch, was a wasted time of money. That was to the Indian agents. Teachers, missionary, and fish cannery owners also opposed the ceremony.
Why did they get to do that?
I guess they don't like the idea of gift giving. They want you to pay for everything.
Well, I kind of see the point of that, but what to do with just being nice? Sometimes people are too nice. You think the Indians were too nice?
I don't know. On April 19th, 1884, an amendment was added to the Indian Act. From then on, anyone who held or attended a potlatch could go to jail.
Are you freaking kidding me?
No, I'm not. Chief Dan Kramer of the Nagmas tribe of the Kwakwakwa, Wakwa, pronounced Kwakwak, Iowak. Oh, that's how you pronounce it. Kwakwak, Iowak, had other ideas. On December 25th, 1921, after 17 years of planning, he hosted a huge potlatch ceremony to honor his marriage. Although held on a remote village island in British Columbia, his potlatch was raided by Indian agents.
Are you freaking kidding? Like, here comes the Gestapo?
Pretty much, breaking it up. Hundreds of ceremonial masterpieces were taken away to museums and private collections worldwide. 20 men and women were sent to Ocala prison in Burnaby, 448 kilometers from home, to serve sentences of 2 to 3 months. The future of the potlatch was unknown. Return to the potlatch. After 3 decades, in 1951, the Indian Act was revised. Section 149, which banned the potlatch, was dropped. The next year, the first public potlatch was held in Victoria, hosted by Chief Mungo Martin. After the ban was lifted, a long campaign brought most, but not all, of the stolen potlatch treasures home. 2 British Columbia museums, Umista Cultural Center in Ilert Bay and Nuyumbali's Cultural Center in Quadra Island, now protect the returned objects. Efforts continue to bring all the treasures back to their rightful place. This is a totem pole at Nuyumbali's Cultural Center.
That's pretty cool, man.
It sure is. And this is at Kingcome Inlet, British Columbia, 1926. A group with potlatch bowls, masks, talking sticks, and button blankets. The size and scope of the confiscated objects is astounding.
Some of them are pretty big.
Yes, they are. Awa Kwa Das, the place to relax and tell stories at the Nuyumbali's Cultural Center on Quadra Island, British Columbia. 4 poles are covered by a cedar roof to shield the users from the elements. Photographs of the potlatch treasures in the Cultural Center were not published at the request of the elders. So those are not specifically them. Maybe. We'll never know.
We'll never know.
A renewed place to dance. A place to dance, artist Heather Holman's painting gathering based on photographs. Traditions have returned to the communities in the case of Nalakapamu of central British Columbia. There's an old photo, yellowed with age, that nudged Bill Walcombe to action. The photo showed a group of young people sitting on a hay wagon in the remote Twal Valley. Bill, an 84-year-old residential school survivor, was one of the young people in the photo. Before he was born, his people, the Naklapamu, pronounced Ental Kampla, and let's try that again. I read Naklapamu, but it's pronounced Entla Kempam, gathered in the valley every fall around the towering guardian pine tree to socialize and dance. They called the tree Nikwitsip Tutsin, pronounced Kwai Tutsin, a place to dance. 100 years had passed since the last gathering. Bill Walcombe, his sister Dorothy Ursaka, and a niece went into the valley to take a photograph of the ancient ponderosa pine, still standing tall. I think that's it. I think that's it too. There's all the dancers. The Cook's Ferry Island, urged by Bill, determined to carry the Nakla Pamu community tradition of gathering. Visitors came from across British Columbia to share in the celebration. They drummed and danced around the guardian tree. In the past, reawakened.
Survivor speaks. Nikwitseventuten is our place to dance, where we held our sacred ceremonies, where children were named and young people were married. My dad told us about that tree. Nikwitseventuten is quite a memorable tree, an old praying tree. As soon as the sun came up, you faced east and you started to sing. And when the sun left, you gave thanks for the day. My dad told me that it stuck in my head. It's not really a prayer, really. It's just something you respect, a respectful feeling to nature, I guess. And this is William Bill Hugh Whalcombe, Nalakla Pamu. Bill Whalcombe attended the Anglican-run St. George's and Methodist-run Kokalitsa Indian residential schools in British Columbia, 1919 to 1932. After he completed school, Bill returned to Nikwitsim, Spence's Bridge, British Columbia. A noted storyteller, he worked for the Canadian National Railway and loved to garden. I have fond memories of the whitewashed log house I grew up in. There was always a sense of security because my mom and dad were there. They were our protectors, our mentors, and loving parents. Mom was brought up in residential school, so she had really good cooking skills. On Christmas Eve, the smells of cinnamon pies and cakes filled the house. Our presents were usually a little bag with an orange, some hard candy, and peanuts. And when she could afford it, that's what Mom would get for us. That made us kids happy. Carolyn, Dagnult, Sotu. And this is chapter 3, Leaving Home. I'm not here.